but coronavirus infections continue to drive around 200 people into the hospital system this week, and we see its impact in those people who are unable to be in work in our public services. Last year saw Russia launch its brutal war in Ukraine, but it also saw the overwhelming response from people all over Wales who opened their homes to Ukrainians escaping from the fighting. It was a year in which we also saw further evidence of climate change, with heat waves and drought orders in the summer and severe storms and flooding in the winter. And last year was a year that marked the beginning of the ongoing cost of living crisis, as food and energy prices started their rapid climb upwards. And of course, we are yet to see an end to that. We provided more than £3.3 billion of targeted help to those who need it the most, through the programmes and the schemes which put money back in people's pockets since the start of this Senedd term. That includes the Fuel Support Scheme, which helped more than 340,000 people over the last winter, increasing the education maintenance allowance to £40 a week, and putting £38 million in the Discretionary Assistance Fund, which made 350,000 emergency payments alone last year. Now, I want to focus on a few examples from the annual report that set out to support people, local communities, and our public services. It is central to the ambition of this government that we want to create a Wales where young people feel they have a future. The new curriculum for Wales is at the heart of that. It was successfully launched last year. It's been rolled out to primary schools and nearly half of secondary schools already. Our Young Person's Guarantee has supported more than 20,000 young people since it was launched, and 11,000 people have started on an employability programme. And at the same time, we've delivered 28,000 all-age apprenticeship starts since May of 2021. Now, those young people who are being helped through those schemes live in communities right across Wales, places where we want people to know that their future is safeguarded. Already, we have brought 2,000 long-term empty properties back into use and delivered more than 2,500 social homes for rent. Our Renting Homes Act is helping to make renting fairer, and it gives private sector tenants greater security of tenure than in any other part of the United Kingdom. And the new default 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in residential areas will make our streets safer for children in particular. People in all our communities rely on the public services that are provided in Wales, and we continue to invest in them. In the NHS, 90% of patient contacts take place outside hospitals. And in the year covered by the annual report, there have been major reforms in dentistry, pharmacy, and in GP contracts. Around 600,000 consultations were delivered in community pharmacies last year, helping to increase capacity across the primary care sector. And the new GP contract is the most significant reform in 20 years, reducing the administrative burden on GPs so they have more time to spend with their patients. And alongside the NHS, we remain committed to paying social care staff the real living wage. And we remain in conversations with the sector to look at terms and conditions to make work in the social care more attractive for staff as part of the work of the cooperation agreement. Alongside all of that, this government takes absolutely seriously the climate and nature emergencies. We have a real obligation to pass on this beautiful place we call Wales to our children and our grandchildren. And in the period of time covered by the annual report, we passed landmark legislation. It will lead to a ban on some of the most commonly littered single-use plastics, and the Cynhadledd is now considering a new bill which will improve air and noise quality, both of which will improve the lives of the communities we live in. And of course, we've responded to the Independent Roads Review report, making sure that we consider both a climate emergency and economic development when we consider new road projects. So a significant amount has been achieved in 2022, but of course, as ever, there's a great deal more to do. Over this next year, we'll be bringing forward bills to reform the way bus services are organised in Wales, to reform our Senedd and electoral systems, to reform Welsh language education, to reform council tax, and to reform coal tip safety law in Wales. We'll be doing all of this in one of the toughest financial climates that we have ever faced since the start of devolution. And just as families across Wales are having to make difficult decisions because of the cost of living crisis, so we too in government face the same dilemmas and the same tough choices. The challenges faced over the course of last year were unprecedented, a combination of economic and budgetary pressures produced by one of the most difficult financial situations the whole country has ever experienced. These are difficulties produced by the way the UK government has mismanaged the UK economy over the last 13 years, giving us a decade of austerity, a botched Brexit, and the disastrous Liz Truss mini-budget, which is set to continue driving interest rates upwards right through into 2024. When we drew up our budget for the current financial year, we brought together all our resources to protect frontline services, provide targeted cost of living support, and to support our economy. But even after doing all of that, our financial position after the spring budget in March is up to £900 million lower in real terms than the then Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, said we needed at the time of the 2021 spending review. This means there is less funding available to do all the things we have to do, let alone all the things we want to do. And that ability goes on being eroded by inflation remaining so stubbornly high. So while we have been able to make significant progress in the second year of our programme for government against these strong headwinds, I have to tell you that these pressures are becoming more intense with each year that passes. This year is already much more difficult than the last financial year, and the next financial year is set to be more difficult still. These are very tough times indeed, but we will use all our experience and our creativity to go on looking after the Wales of today while shaping the Wales we want to see tomorrow. Diolch yn fawr I chi gyd. Looking forward now to taking some questions. And going first to Claire Bode from Bauer Media.
Thank you, First Minister. In the statement released, you mentioned high-quality healthcare, but in the last 6 months, we've heard countless stories showing that that's not really the case. Can you talk a little bit about why the NHS in Wales is delivering high-quality healthcare?
Well, first of all, I believe the NHS in Wales does deliver high-quality care in every part of Wales, and that is the everyday experience of people who use our NHS. Of course, under the stresses and strains of dealing with the aftermath of COVID, a workforce exhausted themselves by going through all that experience, and the budgetary pressures I set out, you see those stresses and strains in the NHS as well. Nevertheless, we are succeeding in bringing down the longest waits, fewer people waiting over 2 years for planned care. And by the way, the standard time for someone receiving planned care in the Welsh NHS is 20 weeks. 20 weeks from the moment you are referred for it to the moment your treatment is completed. So for most people, 2 years is nothing like their experience. But we're bringing down long waits. We're bringing down longer waits over 52 weeks for people in outpatients. The hill is a steep one, and it's been made steeper by the events of the last couple of years. But every single day, the over 100,000 people who work in the Welsh NHS do everything they can to go on providing a service. For most people, most of the time, the system continues to deliver strongly. We want to make sure that that is the experience of absolutely everybody.
Thank you. And over the past few months, we've seen this ongoing saga in Llanelli with the Stradey Park hotel expected to house asylum seekers. Local MP Nia Griffith has spoken out against it, and locals are saying that their concerns are just not being heard. And in the past few weeks, we've seen over 90 hotel staff members lose their jobs as well. Can you outline your position on the placement, and do you know what's being done to support those workers who are now out of employment?
Well, all of this is the experience of the Home Office. None of these are devolved matters. The sadness is that the Home Office never seems to learn from its own experiences. Had they simply reviewed the way in which they set about moving asylum seekers to Penally, just outside Tenby, they would know there are ways in which you can make sure that the needs of asylum seekers are properly attended to, and the needs of local communities are part of that as well. Or you can do it in the way they have in Llanelli, which leads to confusion amongst the local population, different things being said to different people, lack of information to the local authority and to the health board, who will need to provide services for children, if there are to be children, at Stradey Park, for example, and which quite certainly failed to attend to the interests of those nearly 100 people who work at the hotel at the moment. What we want to see as a Welsh Government is we want to see Wales providing for our proper share of people who come legitimately to this country seeking asylum, and we've shown that we do that. But the Home Office has a real obligation to set about this in the right way, open about what it is planning, sharing information with those who need it, accurate in the information that they provide, and attending to the needs of the local community in a way that gives that local community confidence that they are being heard. None of that, to my mind, has been very apparent in the Stradey context. And what would always have been, a development with its challenges has become far more difficult than it needed to be. We lobby the Home Office all the time to learn the lessons of their own experience and to work with public authorities in Wales to make what are, I know and accept, challenging circumstances that they face, to make the best of that rather than the worst of it. Thank you. Teleri, bore da.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, bore da. Os gawn ni'r atebion yma yn Gymraeg hefyd, os gwelwch yn dda. We'll stick with the Stradey Park Hotel to begin with, although you've covered a lot of the points already. What do you think now can be done to de-escalate the kind of rising tensions in the area?
Well, the first thing and the most important thing is to be open with local public services and the local community about what is being planned. It seems to me there is still confusion about how events will unfold over the coming days. I hope that the Home Office will then take things slowly rather than at a rush. Confidence has been badly damaged in Llanelli, and that confidence will have to be rebuilt if asylum seekers are to be successfully housed at the hotel. That certainly means, as I say, being prepared to sit down with people, to hear what they have to say, to give reassurances where those are possible, and to do things at a speed which takes people with you rather than people feeling that their concerns are not being heard and the Home Office moves on regardless. So y pethau pwysica I fi yw i'r swyddfa gartref I bod yn agored gyda bobl lleol, agored gyda'r gwasanaethau lleol, agored gyda'r cymuned lleol hefyd. I roi ymatebion i'r cwestiynau mae pobl wedi codi. mae pobl yn yr awdurdod lleol ddim yn gwybod ar hyn o bryd enghraifft faint o blant sy'n mynd i ddod i'r gwesti. So dydy nhw ddim yn gallu paratoi am ysgolion ac yn y blaen. Ac bobl sy'n byw yn lleol, mae cwestiynau gyda nhw hefyd. So i fod yn agored, i rannu wybodaeth, i roi hyder nôl i bobl, mae swyddfa gatref yn gwrando ar popeth mae pobl lleol yn ddweud. Ac yn fy marn i, pan mae'r swyddfa gatref, os maen nhw'n mynd i bwrw ymlaen gyda'r cynlluniau nhw i wneud i peidio wneud mewn hast, i roi yr amser i'r cynllunio, i wario pethau, ac yn wneud pethau mewn ffordd ble mae pobl lleol yn gallu cael y hyder, mae swyddfa gatre yn fodlon i wneud mewn ffordd mae nhw'n gallu weld yn dderbyniol.
And do you have concerns about the way the BBC has handled the allegations against one of its presenters reported in The Sun over the weekend?
Well, of course, I'm not in any way privy to any details of how the BBC has responded so far. And there are many things which I'm sure none of us know at this point and which will emerge over time ahead. I think the most important thing is for the BBC to demonstrate now that it is responding to whatever has taken place with a speed, with an urgency, and with the depth of investigation that the allegations merit. So while I'm not privy to anything that's happened in the past, I do think there's an important future agenda for the BBC to discharge. Wel, cos dwi ddim yn wedi weld dim byd am beth sydd wedi digwydd a hyn o bryd, a siŵr o fod bydd lot o manylion dal i fod yn dod mas. I fi, y peth pwysica nawr yw beth sy'n mynd i digwydd yn y dyfodol. Mae oblygiadau gyda'r BBC, dwi'n meddwl, i ddangos nawr, mae nhw'n mynd i ymateb i beth sy'n wedi digwydd yn gyflym ac yn ddifrifol hefyd, i roi digon o egni a digon o adnoddau i fewn i roi hyder nôl i bobl, mae nhw'n ymateb, beth bynnag sy'n wedi digwydd, mae nhw'n ymateb mewn ffordd sydd addas i'r beth mae pobl wedi tynnu sylw y BBC ati. Diolch. Going to take a couple of questions off the screen because we can't hear. Our colleague is going to go to Adrian first. He says that the report, the annual report, doesn't mention the huge problems with Betty Cadwallader Health Board and the very large number of people who are waiting. And he says, does the report not tell the whole story? Well, one small point, really, more technical point, that of course, this is a report of the last year, doesn't capture the most recent events at the Health Board. I was in North Wales on Friday. On Thursday evening, I met the new chair of the Health Board. I met the interim chief executive, who's now agreed to remain in her post until the end of this financial year, right through to the end of March of next year. There are problems with the LHB. Of course there are. That's why we've taken the action we have as a government. But they were at pains to remind me of the board's real strengths as well. More than 19,000 people from North Wales work for the Betty Cadwallader University Health Board. They come through the door every day wanting to do their very best to provide services to that 700,000 people. And there are some real strengths in the board as well. Amongst the best cancer services in the whole of Wales, excellent primary care services, the best vaccination rates in Wales. Just like any part of the health service, there are very good things that happen. And part of what the new board and the new chief executive want to do is to give some confidence back to the people who work in the board that all of that is properly recognised and give them a platform to address the real problems that are there. But the problems are being addressed. They're being addressed through the new board. We'll strengthen the board further over this summer. They're being helped by the new expert advisors that have been appointed, expert advisors to help them with the financial difficulties the board has encountered, experts in the provision of planned care, experts in the way in which the board can communicate with its local population to give them confidence that the things that have gone wrong are being put right, and the services that they rely on every single day across that health board go on being there, delivered by highly skilled, highly committed people who want to make that board a success. And in all of that, they will have the support of the Welsh Government. Adrian's second question also goes on to Stradey Park Hotel and other similar housing of asylum seekers that are being planned by the Home Office, I must remind people, elsewhere in Wales. Do you accept that being a nation of sanctuary means taking large numbers of people in this way? When it comes to asylum seekers, Wales is committed to playing our fair part. We take our fair share of asylum seekers, and we take them now in all parts of Wales. The Home Office has moved on from the days when it did it by agreement. It now does it by simply reaching in, looking by itself, very often without reference either to the Welsh Government or to local authorities, for properties that they think would be suitable. And in many ways, that's where their problems begin, because they start not from that perspective of partnership, but from that perspective of being a unilateral actor, able to use the powers that it has at its disposal to make things happen in the way they think is right. We will go on making sure that we take our fair share of the numbers of people who come seeking sanctuary through the asylum system across the United Kingdom. There's no question about that. The question is not, are we prepared to play our part? We are, we do. It's how we can do it with a Home Office that is prepared to recognise that if you're going to have asylum seekers coming to Wales, you can only do that successfully by working alongside the services that are there on the ground, the communities in which those people will be placed, and where the Welsh Government can play our part in being a broker between what the Home Office has to do and its responsibilities and the way that those can be successfully discharged on the ground. Thank you, Adrian. Finally, to Thomas Rogers. Global, and again, Thomas's questions are on the screen. What support is planned for the cost of living crisis as we approach another winter with higher energy costs? I have to be straightforward about this. It was there in what I said in my statement, our ability to go on doing some of the things that we were able to do over the last winter when there were funds available to us will not be possible this winter when those funds no longer exist. Does that mean that there's nothing we can do? Well, absolutely not. We will go on doing a long list of things which in Wales leaves money in people's pockets that otherwise would not be there. So just to give you maybe 3 examples of that, there's a much longer list. Our council tax benefit scheme, £240 million we invest in that. It means in Wales, those people who are least able to afford the council tax don't pay the council tax at all. 220,000 families across Wales benefit from that. That scheme does not exist outside Wales. Secondly, we will go on with that suite of things that we do in schools to offer families the help with the cost of the school day. When the scheme started, we were able to offer it in 1 year. The first year that a child arrived in secondary school, you got extra help with the cost of uniform and so on. Then we doubled it to 2 years. Then we doubled 2 to 4, and now we offer that help in every single year. So if you are a family faced with those costs, knowing that the cost of living crisis makes it more difficult to meet those costs in Wales, every single year you get help through the system which the Welsh Government funds to help you to meet those costs. And then thirdly and finally, everything we do in the childcare field. The most generous childcare scheme anywhere in the United Kingdom, expanded last year, so it's now available to people who are on the cusp of employment, not just people who are in employment already, and where we are already expanding childcare for 2-year-olds, particular focus on provision through the Welsh language as part of our ambition to achieve 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050. All of those things will be there again this winter to help people, because the cost of living crisis is quite certainly not going away. So a question from Thomas about progress in the Welsh NHS, waiting lists, and asking what progress is being made to do more on that for people to access healthcare when they need it. Well, as I said in my answer to Adrian, despite the real challenges that are there, and I don't this morning want to sound at all as though I'm underplaying those challenges, the NHS in Wales is making progress month after month in recovering the ground that was lost during COVID and is made additionally difficult by current financial circumstances. Long waits are coming down in outpatients and inpatients. Contracts are being reformed. So in dentistry, which I know is a struggle in many parts of Wales, dental reform has meant that 174,000 new patients were offered NHS dental care in Wales last year. We thought the reforms would give us 112,000. They delivered 174,000. And there's more to follow. The changes we're making in optometry will mean that more people will be seen by that very skilled group of people who work in the high street in optometry without needing to go to hospital. Everything we are doing to capture the learning that happened in COVID. Outpatient appointments carried out remotely. Consultations with consultants without you needing to leave your home. A huge effort is being made to make sure that, despite the headwinds, which are real, and the fact that things are not as good as we would like them to be for some people who use the NHS, I want people in Wales to know that things are improving. We wish we could improve them faster. We wish we could get to that point of recovery more quickly than we will be able. But what I want people in Wales to be able to see for themselves is that despite the challenge of that journey, the NHS in Wales is succeeding in recovering that ground and getting back to where we were before coronavirus hit us. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you all very much indeed.